Hey, what is going on, everybody out there? I'm Jakejames Lugo. Welcome to the channel and welcome to this brand new edition, new version of JJ's One Man Podcast. Hopefully, you guys are doing all right. Welcome to 2024. Literally, I'm recording this on the first day of the brand new year of 2024, coming off of 2023. It was a wild year overall, but new year, new vibes, resurgence and energy and just new look. As you guys can tell, we're doing a video version of the podcast, which should be fun. Now, this probably won't be like every single episode. It won't be super frequent, but it'll happen from time to time, at least that I'm planning for throughout the entirety of the year. So I figured this would be something new and different to kind of mix things up and make it a little bit more interesting for all of you out there that listen to the podcast, that check out the channel, and all the content that I post up all over the place on various parts of the internet. But as always, little housekeeping. Now that we got the new look, as you guys can see, okay, drop me a like down below in the actual, below the actual video. Leave me a comment in the comment section. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because there's a lot of great content that's on the channel right now. New reviews, new videos, gameplay stuff, podcast episodes like this, the audio version of the podcast, and of course, this new video version of the podcast as well. So for the first things first, what we're going to do, as you guys are going to see in a bit, we're going to do a couple different things now as far as the podcast for this episode, okay? We're going to talk about the best and the worst aspects of 2023 as a year overall in relation to gaming stuff, because if I did gaming, movies, entertainment, all that stuff, we'd be here literally all day. It would take way too long to dive into all this stuff, but I'm going to keep things kind of, condensed into gaming stuff, because there was already a lot to talk about when it came to the video game industry, when it came to the gaming medium in general. There was a whole bunch of stuff all over the place, but what we're going to do here, we're going to do the sandwich method. Now, if you don't know what the sandwich method is, don't worry about it. You're going to see it in practice right now. But for those that still want to know, okay, we're going to have one good thing, one bad thing, and kind of top everything off with two good things about the year sandwiched in between everything else, including all the bad stuff that went down. And trust me, if you know anything about 2023, if you were paying attention to what was going on in the games industry, you knew about all the bad stuff and all the crazy stuff that happened throughout this year. It was pretty ridiculous, to say the least. But kick things off, start off with the first good thing. Let's talk about, all these games that came out this year, because there was a lot of games that were released in 2023. There was so much stuff to play, like throughout all the different platforms for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and Series S, Nintendo Switch, PC was even cooking out here. There was a lot of different stuff to play across every single platform. A lot of big releases, a lot of good contenders for Game of the Year for 2023 at the Game Awards, which I thought was pretty dope. We had games like, obviously, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which I had a lot of fun playing. I had a lot of fun playing Final Fantasy 16, Street Fighter 6, Hogwarts Legacy, Mortal Kombat 1, Baldur's Gate 3. Some people would even throw in their Diablo 4 as well, even though that game did have some problems. But again, that was like a major release for a lot of people. Avatar Frontiers of Pandora was another one. Thinking back earlier in the year, the Dead Space remake for a lot of people was pretty darn good. I finally got to play that on Game Pass. I've been playing it on and off on Game Pass ever since I downloaded it, and I really enjoyed that. In the same way that people also enjoyed Resident Evil 4 remake. There was a ridiculous amount of games. Now, granted, there was a whole bunch of bad games in between all that different stuff. Of course, we understand this. We acknowledge that. But look at all that good stuff that we got to play that I'm pretty sure many of you out there are going to still be playing this stuff all the way into the beginning of 2024, at least until some of the bigger games start to come out, which, funny enough, we'll talk a little bit more about going into 2024 as far as game releases are concerned once we get towards the end of the episode here, which hopefully I might have some timestamps down below so that way you guys could jump to different sections wherever you guys want to jump to. That's one thing I know a lot of people brought up to me as far as the podcast itself, not just with this version, but also the audio version as well. And I was like, you know what? That's actually a good point. Some people like at least, going to the topics that they care about and then maybe jumping back to some of the other stuff. So let me know what you all think about that down below in the comment section. Do you like some of these changes? Do you like some of this convo? Do you like this format? Talk to me about all that stuff down below in the comment section. But now let's move on to the bad stuff. And I got to get some water here because I'm going to be hitting this a couple times throughout this episode because there are so many crazy things that happened this year that was like really bad that we have to get some real talking, right? We're going to switch things up, obviously, with some of the stuff that we're going to do right here. So check this out, okay? We have to talk about the craziness that was Hogwarts Legacy. Okay, so Obviously, many of you know I'm a big fan of Hogwarts Legacy. I got to play the game, I got to review it. I had a lot of stuff to say about it overall. But in the midst of all that, while a lot of people, because this game sold well over like 15 to 18 million copies, across all platforms, there was a lot of controversy with this game. And the biggest one being, obviously, was this boycott that happened that a lot of people just were not feeling. That just, again, there were some people that were really down for it because they were trying to stand for something, and a lot of people that saw right through a lot of the stuff that was being said about it, which is a shame. As you can see here, there's a lot of different, articles that have been written about Hogwarts Legacy within that time frame. We got NBC News that was commenting on this stuff. We had IGN, obviously. We had Dexerto, Los Angeles Times. There was a lot of different things that were going on all the way back for January, February. February is where the game came out, but leading up to that point, there was a whole bunch of stuff that people were talking about with it. So let me click on one of these articles, see one of the more recent ones, because a lot of this stuff is for February. I want to get a little bit further into the year if I can. Here, the Atlantic. Here's something here, the Atlantic. And I know not everybody goes to a lot of these different outlets for news and stuff. Like, I go to the basics that most people go to, like IGN, NBC News, Kotaku, obviously, Polygon, The Verge. And not because I believe every single word of one place or another, but mostly because that's usually the places that people frequent. And that's where you get the majority of a lot of the different opinions and stuff about this. But the big thing with Hogwarts Legacy was that it experienced a boycott in February from a lot of different places, a lot of different outlets, and including, this is what I wanted to get here, the Wired review, which was a huge, you guys remember, I talked about this. I had a huge problem with this back in the day. Here, I'm going to move my camera a little bit so you guys could see it a little bit easier. But yeah, I had a huge problem with this damn review because I felt that this was one of the most egregious reviews that I had ever read in all my career covering video games. And it was very indicative of the vibe for a lot of people, just this weird disconnect from both the audience and the reality of what was going on with this game. There was a lot of places, especially at the Gamer. If you guys remember, okay, I was on a podcast with the BBC, okay, where I got to talk about I think it's Stephanie or Stacey Henley, who's the editor-in-chief of the Gamer, and we had almost kind of like a little bit of debate back and forth about this game and about the idea of boycotting it. And the main point that I stood back then, and I'll even reiterate now for everybody watching this, was that I didn't think it was right to shame all the people who wanted to play that game that had nothing to do with any of the controversy going on. And in addition to that, the other issue that I had was the way that Avalanche software was being treated by literally everybody almost in the industry. They were getting kind of put under this umbrella that they felt like, they were supporting J.K. Rowling. They were doing all these other things, saying certain statements about them that I can't even really repeat here on YouTube, which even though I think that's ridiculous, but the YouTube algorithm, that everybody has to bend over backwards for. The point is that this group of devs, and WB Games in particular, was really getting, scrutinized and kind of just dragged through the mud over something that they had nothing to do with. And this entire review over at Wired was indicative of that, which I thought was so ridiculous. Again, you're going to give this game a 1 out of 10? For what? Which, even if you look at the way that it was written, it was they're not reviewing the game. They're reviewing the issues that they have personally with this other person. It has nothing to do with this game. It might be their IP, it might be their, universe and all this stuff, but Avalanche software had nothing to do with all these gripes. All this stuff was completely indicative of, one's personal problem as opposed to the game itself, which I thought was not fair. And I saw this from a variety of places. Again, the Atlantic gets more into it, and they don't go deeper into this because you got to pay for their stuff, but you get a lot of places that were covering this, throughout the entirety of the year up to the point post launch. And it was just insane. Even here, looking at this IGN article that we had from a while back that actually talked about some of the statements that were coming out of Avalanche software, or at least Avalanche, where the devs were talking about, look, we don't agree with this woman practically. We have nothing to do with her. She has nothing to do with this game. And they were just dragged through the mud from it. And it's I come from the view look, if you're going to stand with devs, or you're going to say you support devs, you got to see things for what they actually are. And I saw a whole bunch of places, including a few spots and individuals and groups that we'll get into a little bit later as we get to other stuff this year, that I felt were just not standing on business. They were not being genuine. They were not being fair to this game. I mean, IGN's review of Hogwarts Legacy that I saw was the only game I could think of in any sort of recent memory, let alone over years. That was the only review that I saw that had some sort of like disclaimer right before, which I thought was really weird. I saw all these websites doing that, where they were actually putting like this disclaimer saying that their views don't line up for such and stuff. And it's like, just review the game. People are just going to the review for the game itself. Like, there's a time and place and spot to talk about all this controversy. But like, how are you going to put all that controversial stuff on the game, which literally the content of the game had nothing to do with any of that? And I felt like many places just couldn't separate the two, or many places weren't doing their job right. Many places weren't doing what they were supposed to do and actually, be objective about all this. And it was a shame because I didn't think Avalanche Software deserved that. I didn't think WB Games deserved that. I definitely didn't believe that Troy Levitt that I saw at one point got like dogpiled on, bullied practically out of his job from working on that game. It's one thing to have an opinion about someone else's opinions, and then it's another thing to try to like sick people on somebody for whatever reason. It was just a mess of like epic proportions, and it really showed that a lot of outlets and a lot of people within certain outlets just did not know how to do their job right, and it was a shame. It was a very shameful time, and it was one of the biggest disappointments that I saw from everything that was going on with this game. It was a darn shame, and I just couldn't believe it. I really could not believe like how bad it was, with Hogwarts Legacy. That was just like such a crappy time just to be a fan of Harry Potter, which some people that were fans of Harry Potter were just minding their own business and they got caught up in all this mess. And even the people that were streaming the game, everybody remembers this? Where people were literally just streaming the game and there was like websites devoted to sending mobs of people to go hate on them. And it's like, whoa, like you want to talk about the term harassment and any of stuff like that. That was egregious. And what blew my mind, what I could not believe, was people that were supporting stuff like that, supporting this website, like pointing out streamers, content creators, doing all this stuff, and it was insane. It was absolutely insane. It was like, how can you all talk about being better in our industry or being better people within the games community and be part of something like that? Or do something like that to someone, especially someone who's not bothering anybody, just minding their own business, playing a video game on a stream that you might not like the game, but what does that got to do with that individual person? Like, why you got to treat them like crap? And that's how I felt. And I also felt that for a time, many people just couldn't be vocal about how they felt about that. And it sucked, man. It really did suck. I mean, let me know some of your thoughts about that whole controversy, that whole series of events down below in the comment section, because I think that was one of the worst moments that I've ever seen, in the games industry and the games media, and let alone one of the worst moments of 2023 when it came to gaming stuff, because it was so like over the top ridiculous. And the boycott was a complete failure because the game sold so many copies. It's literally still the best-selling game of 2023. So all that led to this, which, more power to Avalanche and more power to WB Games, but it had to go through such a crappy like turn of events, which was like ridiculous, man. So that's that. Let's go to a good thing, because that was very heavy-handed. I mean, everybody has their opinions about that whole ordeal, but a good thing I could say that came up next, at least I look at as a good thing in some way, was the merger between Xbox and Activision, which finally went through, finally actually got, completely done and over with, and they were actually able to finalize all that deal and stuff, which for many was a big deal, and it was a big shift of power within the games industry, or pretty much a shift of landscape, I should say. Not really power, because Activision and Microsoft are big entities, but it's not like, they're going to be making decisions for everybody, you know what I'm saying? So the reason why I thought that this was a good thing is because not only are you going to get more games that are exclusive to the Xbox platform, especially Microsoft stuff, Activision stuff, sorry. Again, you're eventually going to get that point where you're going to see like more exclusives related to content drop from games like Call of Duty, Crash Bandicoot, obviously Spyro the Dragon, that's Activision. I'm trying to think also, because it's like companies and development teams like Toys for Bob and stuff. You're going to see them, hopefully, quote unquote, actually start putting out more stuff on Microsoft platforms, a little bit more so than on the others. Granted, Microsoft did say at one point that they were going to, they were going to have Call of Duty still appear on PlayStation, which I get it. You need that to happen to be a thing or whatever. But like, let's not beat around the bush. Like, Activision and Microsoft are going to have like some sort of exclusivity things going on, since now they own all those IP. I mean, look, like just looking at this image right here, I want to show you guys. for a second, from IGN, you got, what is it, Crash Bandicoot. You got, World of Warcraft. You got a lot of big things going on. Overwatch, Candy Crush. There's a lot of big Guitar Hero, Spyro the Dragon, like I said. And I already said Crash Bandicoot, but that's a big, big deal. And for me, as a fan, of Microsoft and a fan of games, that could really speak volumes to more games that were retro legacy games coming to Game Pass. Because that would be actually kind of cool to see more of those Activision classics that we haven't really seen in a long time get some sort of resurgence or some sort of revitalization on a place like Game Pass. Or even if they provided it to PlayStation Plus, the Essentials or the premium games library. I think that would actually be kind of cool. Granted, it'd be obviously more catered to Game Pass in this case, but I'm pretty sure business-wise, Microsoft is not opposed to the idea of actually doing something like that. I think that would actually be kind of cool. Again, without knowing the specifics, that's just me just spitfiring, just ideas and just things to come out of this. But the bigger issue for a lot of people was obviously Call of Duty. I think that was a big, big deal for many. We're still going to get it across all platforms, but you best believe Microsoft is going to do some stuff with Call of Duty, or at least, with some of their other IPs. Granted, they also have Bethesda. They're going to be doing stuff with, obviously, the Elder Scrolls, maybe any other big stuff that they have, because I know Fallout's obviously a big deal for many people, but that Activision merger with Microsoft and Xbox was a massive, massive thing that many people really took notice of. It's two gargantuan or two massive entities just coming together like that. So for some people, for a lot of people, it's a good thing. For others, maybe not so much, but I look at it as a good thing, or something that was, good in the context of what happened throughout 2023. So moving on from there, because now we got to talk about more nonsense. We got to talk about more trash, more garbage, more craziness, more controversy. This was a big one. To me, this right here was one of the biggest stories, especially in the YouTube space, since it happened towards the end of the year. But it had been going on for quite a bit, but it happened towards the end of the year. And that's obviously the major deal with Gerard the Completionist and the Open Hand Foundation. Obviously, this was a huge story to me and to a lot of people. Now, obviously, you had those individuals that were covering this story, obviously, to just keep milking it for the drama and the controversy that it was. But in the greater context of YouTube, the gaming industry, content creators, this was massive, because things like Indie Land, for a lot of places, a lot of publishers and a lot of companies that looked at that as charity work and stuff, that rocked everybody to its core, because of the fact that money that was supposed to be going to charity, to dementia research, to certain organizations, was simply not going to it. And for a lot of people, that constituted fraud, or at least it filled the definition of fraud, allegedly. And, the different work from places like, obviously, Mudahar and Carl Jobs, they did all this work about literally everything that was going on, even going as far as to have a call, which you could see right here in a tweet from Mudahar. They released the entire full Discord call that they had with this guy that pretty much put everything on Front Street for what was going on with this story. Because I remember even watching those first initial videos when they first came out from both Summonary Gamers and Carl Jobs. He, or at least the two of them, had put all these things there, all their findings, all the facts. And literally almost every big to moderate size YouTuber or content creator that was within that circle was coming out to defend Gerard. And you saw this. You saw this on Front Street. You saw this from so many people that were doing that so quick to do that as a knee-jerk reaction, which I can understand to an extent. But when it comes to matters of this serious nature, it's always good to take a step back and actually look at everything before you pass a judgment or you give an opinion or whatever else. The one who did it the best, in my opinion, out of all the people that I saw, was Pat the NES Punk. Now, for some of this stuff here, or at least some of you out there have seen my previous episodes when all this was happening, this might be kind of retreading familiar territory, but just for the sake of this conversation with what we're having with the best and worst of 2023. Pat the NES Punk gave a statement. He talked about how, again, this was really disappointing. This is really messed up. I waited before actually passing my own or formulating my own opinion, seeing all the facts, and the facts were out there. And this is what it was. And I was massively disappointed. And I did not like this. He did it the best way possible that anybody could have approached this situation. If you were a popular YouTuber or content creator that was connected to Gerard in some way, or if you were collaborating with them or a friend of them, all this stuff. From some of the other places that I saw, especially from those from the Normal Boots crowd, from all the people that worked with Gerard, that were part of, again, Indie Land in some way, that were like on the Indie Land streams and stuff, a lot of them didn't handle it that well. A lot of them didn't handle it the right way. A lot of them looked like they had egg on their face, literally, like shortly afterwards. The biggest one being Pro Jared, who didn't even watch the videos and was commenting out here, you know, on Twitter and stuff. And he looked like a fool, you know, and everybody deservedly pointed at him and laughed at him. You know, then you had other people like Wood Harker from Beat 'em Ups that ended up later on coming out and apologizing to the two guys, you know, from just knee-jerking, reacting to all this stuff and just making statements that felt more like, haha, you know, some drama YouTubers and stuff. And those guys just proved them wrong. They proved everybody wrong. There was a couple others within all of this stuff that was going on that I felt also just didn't handle it right after everything that happened. You know, I saw Miss Fushi where she was making statements, especially with the Dexterdo article, which I understand Dexterdo messed up with their headline, but they were still reporting on a lot of the stuff that was coming out, or at least making articles about it, just like IGN did, just like many other places did as well. And you know, people like her and a few others that I saw were making statements, like trying to take jabs at people, you know, at these guys for whatever reason. And then when everything else came out afterwards, even more so, they kind of just receded back to their own little side of the internet. They're just like, oh, I don't want to talk about it anymore. You know, I just did what I said, you know, and I just want to defend my friends, whatever. The problem is with that I found that I thought was so kind of like lackluster and really Bush League was like, look, if you're going to put a statement out there like what you did, you know, you can't just run away and tuck tail when everybody rightfully so comes out and points out stuff to you, or at least responds back in kind of like a brazy fashion. Because if you're going to talk brazy, you got to expect that brazy reaction back in some way. And you have to be able to take that. You have to be able to take that criticism. I think there's a good way and a bad way to handle it. And the way that I saw people like Miss Fushi and others that were like her and other content creators that were in similar fashion, many of them did not handle it the right way. They just, I don't even think like some of them, at least the majority of them, didn't apologize. Like I mentioned a few like Wood Harker, and I saw a few others. Ant Dude was another one that actually commented and he apologized and stuff. But some of them, I just felt like they just did not handle it right. They should have never been in that conversation in the first place. They should have did like what Pat the NES Punk did and waited to see what actually was up. And they didn't do that. So where it all comes back down to is this idea of trust between content creators and the audiences, and especially within the games industry and at least the gaming media, between those that are in the media, that are actual traditional media, and those that are in new media. I feel like there's a big element of trust that's been broken and violated and really not shattered, but shaken in some way, that people have lost in a lot of these content creators, because everybody's going to be looking at stuff like this sideways from now on. A lot of people are going to be very distrusting of charity work from content creators, which I could understand. Again, Indie Land was so huge. Indie Land was such a big deal for many people, especially if you were following gaming YouTubers, if you were following gaming companies. A lot of indie developers like Yacht Club Games, or the developer of, I think it's, Sabotage Studios, which is the developer of, The Messenger and Sea of Stars. You know, I can only imagine how those people felt. They removed Gerard from their game because he was an NPC in their game for a time. And when all this hit the fan, they just took him out and just replaced him, which leads into another conversation, which we'll get into a little bit later when I get to some of the other bad stuff, about how there are certain conflicts of interest that I don't think should be done. There's certain like lines that should not be crossed, especially with how murky it could get with certain people just, again, covering games, making content about games, and then getting very like buddy and very close to some of these developers. So when stuff like this happens, everybody looks awkward. Everybody looks like foolish. Like it's one of those things where I was like, again, as someone as media, I've always wanted to work with different companies, but there are certain points where it's like, okay, this is the line that cannot be crossed, because then it becomes a conflict of interest, then it becomes awkward, and you have to make sure that your ethics and your P's and Q's are really like taken care of. That way, if something does happen, or if something does come up that questions my integrity or their integrity or the morality or the ethics of the issue or whatever situation, that everything could be accounted for. And with this one, you know, with the Gerard's NPC in their game asking for donations and then this happening, it just made it look really bad for everybody. So I can't blame them for removing him. So like I said, a big amount of trust has been lost with all that stuff happening. And it's a shame. It is what it is, but it is a shame. So the other thing I should mention before we move on, I don't think Gerard's ever coming back to content creation. I'm going to be honest with you. I think the Completionist is over. I think the Completionist is done, because between the stuff that came out in that call, which, by the way, from his own words, okay? This is not me saying any of this stuff as speculation or throwing an opinion into the ring or to the pot. It's literally coming from Gerard himself saying that he would just walk away from all this stuff. And I think at this point, you put that out there into the world, you have them record this call where you say that, you clearly come out and make statements that show that you knew about stuff and was basically lying to a lot of people. Like, it's bad enough. So I don't even think you're getting that Donkey Kong Country 2 or Donkey Kong Country 3 video that he said would be the last Completionist video. I don't even think many of you guys out there are going to get that because it's just so bad. It's just that a lot of people have lost faith in the Completionist, have lost faith in Gerard, because of what he did. Whatever the intentions or the motivations of it were, all the details and the final points. The point is, you lied to your audience, you lied to the greater gaming community, and you kind of just, you showed different things in that conversation with Carl and Mudahar that, you weren't thinking about the repercussions for the people that were going to be affected by this. You were thinking about the stuff for yourself, and you showed that 110%. And I think people are done with that. They don't want to support the Completionists in the same way that they did before. So I think he walks away. I think it's over for that, and it's a shame because stuff like that should not happen. Stuff like that should definitely not happen overall. But moving on from there, going over to some of the better, good things that I guess we can talk about, and which I think I should get a picture in here of this, which, because I think it'd be, it would make more sense to show at least some material with it. Here we go. Okay, so again, this is video, so you guys are going to see me looking a little goofy while we're talking about this stuff. But let's talk about the Super Mario Brothers movie, okay? The Super Mario Brothers movie, which made a massive killing at the box office for many people. The Super Mario Brothers movie was epic. It was literally a big deal for many people. And, I think it was really cool just seeing that, just being able to talk about Super Mario Brothers in a movie context that doesn't involve this movie over here. This, the Goomba, the meme Goomba over here. But this movie right here, we're talking Jack Black, we're talking Peaches, we're talking, Chris Pratt, Anya Taylor-Joy. It was epic wins for everybody over here for the Super Mario Brothers movie and for Nintendo. That was a big deal. It was massive. A lot of people love this stuff. What's really cool is that this also affected the theme parks for Universal because we got the Epic Universe stuff happening for Super Mario Brothers. And, I want to be able to go at some point. I haven't gone to Universal in so many years, but eventually I want to go because I want to go check that out and I want to go check out the Harry Potter stuff. But with Super Mario Brothers, this is one of those things that's man, this was a good, nice W for gaming in general that ended up being a big deal in other avenues, in movies in particular, right? And it was just a fun movie. I saw a lot of people that were dogging on the Super Mario Brothers movie. They were really criticizing it hard. And I can understand as a movie, when you're trying to be critical about it, you could say certain things that you could criticize it about. But as a film, I felt that it was fun. I thought that it was a great way to adapt something that wasn't really adapted all that well into a movie or other mediums, or, pretty much in the same level of quality that we saw this. In a much better way that was faithful to the original source material while giving us something new that was exploring new territory. It's weird not hearing, Charles Martinet's voice as Mario. And by the way, one of the bad things I didn't include in this list here was him retiring as the voice of Mario. But at least they paid some homage to him. He was Jumpman, randomly. That was the Donkey Kong arcade version of Mario that showed up in the movie that gave his voice. And he was also Mario's dad, which I think was what better way to show love to the original voice actor, the original voice of Mario for a generation, for a film that was huge, massive. Look, I don't think that Peaches got nominated for an Oscar for Best Song, but I know it won awards. And I know it was a massive hit for so many people. Jack Black as Bowser, who would have thought that casting was going to be good? Who would have thought that would have worked? You know what I'm saying? Now we just got to take that same energy that we got from the Mario Brothers movie and put it into Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Because I actually had fun with Sonic 2 as a movie, but I don't think that Sonic 2 was as big as freaking the Super Mario Brothers movie. But I think Sonic 3 could be, coming off of that. Oh, yes. Yes, of course. I would definitely love to see that, right? So now let's talk about something else that's bad, right? And I actually have to pull up the tweet that actually has this here. See if I got it right here. Okay. Yeah, let's talk about another bad thing that happened E3 going away, man. Okay, this was another one of those worst aspects of 2023 that was really salty. It was really like, it was expected, but you're never truly ready for it when something like this happens. Okay, if you guys looking at this is the statement from the ESA that pretty much says, like, after more than 2 decades of E3, each one bigger than the last, the time has come to say goodbye. Thanks for the memories. Good game, well played. Or pretty much GGWP, if you guys know what the acronym stands for. But basically, this was the year, or the ending of the year was the year that pretty much confirmed that E3 is never coming back. And it's weird for me because, like I said in all the episodes where I talked about this last year leading up till now, this is weird for me because I could say that I went to the very last E3 show. In total, I've gone to 6 E3s. My first was in 2014, and then from 2014 to 2019. So 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay, so 6 E3s like that. Because you have to count the years that you started and the years that you ended. And it's weird because I saw the best and the worst aspects of E3. The best aspects of E3 to me was the spectacle, the freaking atmosphere, the hype surrounding brand new games coming out throughout the entirety of the year, the craziness of all the different announcements and the people and the personalities that were all over the place. I've even, over the years that I've gone to E3, I've allowed other people to go to E3 and been directly responsible for them being able to attend the show in some way. At the same time, I've going to the press conferences, seeing all the press conferences in person, with the exception of Nintendo, because by the time I was going, Nintendo didn't have a press conference anymore. They were actually just doing their Nintendo Direct stuff, and it's fine. That's whatever. But seeing the Nintendo Direct with everybody in the middle of the E3 floor on this giant projector screen or this giant monitor and everybody wiling out because of Super Smash Brothers, wiling out in the media room, because Smash Ultimate had showed that everybody was here. Literally everybody was there. It's moments like that that I love. Going to my first PlayStation press conference, real talk, I went with Hip Hop Gamer. I went with Red Infamy. I went with my outlet at the time and a bunch of other people that I was close with throughout the industry, and sitting within those first few rows for my first PlayStation conference and getting some of those big announcements that we got. Because I think that was one of the years, or the next year after that, was when God of War, the reboot, was announced, or at least shown for the first time significantly. I remember one of them was on the stage. I think that was my first year where it was on the stage. And then the next year, I think, is when they had it in the orchestra hall. I know one of those years they did that. So timing's a little off. But I remember seeing stuff like that. Seeing freaking... The one of my favorite that I remember from the PlayStation conference was going to the time where they announced not only Final Fantasy VII Remake. I was in that room. I'm in the highlight reel for PlayStation that year during the PlayStation press conference where they showed FF7 Remake for the first time. That trailer that says Remake. And everybody lost their damn mind. That's me in the audience jumping up for joy there. You could see me in red. I'm sitting next to 2 people that I was hanging out with at the time. And they also at the same time also showed The Last Guardian was coming out. Shenmue 3 was coming out, even though the game ended up being terrible. The point is, though, it was a hype experience in general. Or going to the Microsoft conference, seeing Ori and the Blind Forest, Ori and the Will of the Wisp, man. Like a lot of different things. Or being in the audience when Keanu Reeves was hanging out and saying that he was in Cyberpunk 2077. I was in that room. There's things like that, on top of everything else that comes with it that really made E3 an experience to remember every single year that I went. So seeing this right here, right? Seeing this happen, in its official capacity, saying that look, this is it. We're done. It's over. Pack it up. Hit the showers. Don't even grab a bagel on the way out. It's over. It's such a salty thing for me to deal with. And for a lot of people, for all the crap, right? For all the crap that people talk about E3, about how much of a pain in the butt the show was to cover and all that stuff, every single one of those individuals, as much as they like to put up a front, loved being in the atmosphere when the moments were at their best. Hands down. Being able to play Smash Ultimate for the first time with your friends, being part of that tournament where I got the tell, and I don't know if you could see it there, but I got the pins for Smash Brothers. From being there, getting my R-Wing wings from when the Star Fox Zero was there, playing the game in an actual R-Wing. Come on, you can't hate on moments like that. Hanging around, by the way, when Reggie Fils-Aimé was still over at Nintendo, just walking around, but just being a boss with everybody, being nice, being chill. Seeing Miyamoto lurk around, or what was it? My favorite one. Seeing Hideo Kojima lurk around, start taking pictures of everybody, like he was like all sneaky and stuff, because Homeboy created Metal Gear Solid, it just looked funny in the context of that. Like, it was just things like that I think I credit to E3 as a show where if you were there, you felt that. You felt that fun, you felt that nostalgia, you felt that excitement. You felt the entire spectacle of that show, not just from what you saw on TV, from watching it on places like G4 or watching it at IGN or online on other places like YouTube or wherever else, Twitch, whatever have you. It was still a special show, and it was still significant for a lot of people. And it's a darn shame that we're never going to see that again, or at least never see it in that same capacity again, because we are going to have Summer Game Fest, which is going to replace it, like I've said plenty of times. Jeff Keighley is already on that, and I think a lot of companies that were leaving E3 were going to go work with Jeff Keighley in some capacity, which is totally fine. But, again, we're never going to get that same level of spectacle ever again. So, GG's to E3. We'll miss you in some way, but either way, it is what it is. That was a sad one for many people. And a lot of the issues that led up to it, I will say, to kind of end it off, were really at the fault of the ESA, because they didn't know what that show was supposed to be. They didn't actually decide what they wanted that show to be overall. And they just kept making a lot of boneheaded decisions. And I felt like they could have done things better. We probably still would have E3 now, even with COVID being a massive thing with the pandemic. But even so, it is what it is. So, moving on from there, let's talk about something really good that happened recently, right? Let's talk about Grand Theft Auto 6, okay? Grand Theft Auto 6 happening. That was cool. That was really awesome. I mean, the announcement of Grand Theft Auto 6, that besides all the leaks and besides all the craziness that happened, Grand Theft Auto is such a massive series for a lot of people. I mean, look at this. One of the biggest stories that IGN covered last year. Grand Theft Auto 6 is significant because people love this series. They love GTA. It's just a fun sandbox / open world game for people. It has some great storytelling and great commentary and parody of real life. I mean, look at Grand Theft Auto 5. Grand Theft Auto 5 and Grand Theft Auto Online are massive games for people that they still play to this day. And I bet you, after this game comes out, they're going to still have people that are still playing GTA Online or GTA 5 in some significant fashion, because that game was topping the charts literally all the time. Funny enough, it's like Call of Duty. For whatever reason, Call of Duty always gets in the top charts all the time because for some reason, they just keep selling games. They just keep selling stuff out there. And I feel like when GTA 6 comes out, it's coming out in 2025. So we got to wait a minute. We got to wait a whole year before this thing drops. But when it drops and when it comes out, it's going to be such a massive deal. And it's exciting because Rockstar has a level of quality to them that they just know how to make good, fun games. Clearly, they have a lot of fun commentary, a lot of stuff. And because GTA 6 is taking place in Vice City, which is a parody of Miami, which is a parody of Florida, all those Florida jokes in that trailer for GTA 6 are golden. It's just fantastic seeing the level of the boundaries they're going to push and the element of jokes they're going to kind of poke at. It's going to be so much fun to see this stuff with GTA 6, man. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be hype. I cannot wait. Check it out. A lot of people cannot wait. Let me know your thoughts and your excitement about GTA 6 down below in the comment section. Are you ready to go hang out in Vice City? What's the first thing you're going to do in GTA 6? What do you want to see in GTA 6 happen, besides what we saw in the trailer? Talk to me about all that down below in the comments, because, man, when GTA 6 drops, it's over for literally every other game that's coming out around the time. Don't come out in the same month as GTA 6. I don't care what company you are. Even if you're Activision, if you're releasing Call of Duty, or if you're PlayStation releasing Horizon or God of War, do not come out the same month as GTA 6, because that month is closed. Your game is not selling if you come out in that same month, for real. I'm just putting it out there. So I don't want to hear no game developers complaining, about this, when it happens finally, right? So let's get into some more nonsense. Okay, we talked about some good stuff. Let's get into some more nonsense, right? We have to talk about probably the other biggest thing that was one of the worst things to happen in in 2023, which is, of course, the Insomniac Games Leak, which is going to lead into another conversation about stuff that I've talked about in the previous episode or one of the other previous episodes, okay, of the podcast before the new year. But we're going to kind of retread a little similar territory and dive deeper into it. The Insomniac Games leak was terrible. It was a massive breach that was done by a hacker group that stole all this information and pretty much just put out there on Front Street Insomniac Games, their internal plans, their internal workings, emailed documents, revealing new games that are coming out into next year and the year afterwards, all the way to like 2032 or 2035. Massive, massive timeline of games that they had planned out and stuff that they were working on that clearly was not ready to be shown to the public. And it sucks, but it happened. And it's a shame because Insomniac Games didn't deserve that because they didn't do anything to anybody. They're not bothering nobody. They're over here. They just gave us Spider-Man 2, made a phenomenal game with that. That, my opinion, for me, was the best game of this year. A lot of people say Baldur's Gate 3, but I had more fun playing Spider-Man 2 than I did Baldur's Gate. As good as Baldur's Gate 3 might be for a lot of people. But they made one of the best games of the year. They were really kicking ass. They were really doing good stuff. And they were setting up for a third game, obviously. But this happened and everything got put on Front Street. Now, here's the problem with this whole series of events, this whole ordeal, right? The big issue is that this same event, while not the fault of Insomniac Games, they had nothing to do with any of this stuff I'm going to talk about, right? But this entire sequence of events with the leak that happened with them led into what I felt was also one of the worst moments for the gaming media and for those that cover video games in our space in the industry, and also for those that are associated or that are tangential or within proximity of it, because this whole thing with the leak really showed a double standard that was going on within the scene. And right here we have probably a real big encapsulation of that, which, again, I have a lot of friends in the industry. I have a lot of people that cover a lot of this stuff in different sides of the industry, in development, in media, in publishing, in PR. My problem with this particular thing, and this is Greg Miller's tweet, as you guys could see here. This is when he posted this up after the leaks happened from Insomniac, and he's basically saying that they're not going to cover it. And what came from this, for a lot of people, was a lot of things that people felt was a huge double standard and a huge hypocritical stance to take, because of the nature not only of this leak, but other leaks that have been reported on in the past. There was a lot of places that were saying, like, look, we should not be covering the Insomniac Games leak because it was done maliciously. There was all this info about personal info from the developers and their families and all this other stuff, which is true. And from what I've seen from a lot of different places, both, media and non-media, so people on the internet, YouTubers, content creators, whoever else, a lot of the people that are covering this were not covering the personal info. They were not covering the details of the individuals that work at that company. They were covering the games that got leaked out from this, which to me, I understand, as much as it sucks that it happened, it still is fair game for a lot of people. And the reason why it's fair game is because it's news. It's relevant news to the gaming public. If you're an outlet, if you're working at, IGN, if you're working at the Washington Post, if you're working at The Verge, Polygon, Kotaku, you're working at Rock, Paper, Shotgun, many other websites, the Nerd Stats, which is who I write for now, that type of stuff, the details about their games that they were working on coming out in the next couple of years, all the way through to the end of that timeline that they had, that's all news. That's all information that's fair game to report on. It has nothing to do with getting into the personal info of other people's stuff. It has nothing to do with any of that. And what sucks about this is that people saw that, people felt that that was a big issue, and they were rightfully so pointing out times where after Greg put out a statement that it's like, hey, listen, hold up. With all these other leaks over here, you had no problem doing that. And some of them, like the Capcom leak, which you guys could see here that someone pointed out, y'all didn't have any issue with that. So what's the problem? So what's the deal? And a lot of people were fed up with it. And it was a lot of back and forth that I saw amongst people that were saying, like, yo, like, this isn't right, because you clearly have some sort of relationship with Insomniac. And the reason was specifically with Greg, and that he covered at one point, or at least it came out where it actually was pointed out by many different people, okay, was that him and some of his buddies were in Spider-Man 2. And we're also in Spider-Man 1 for Greg specifically because of the shirtless Spider-Man thing. And it should not be looked at as controversial, and it shouldn't be an issue to point out that there's clearly a conflict of interest there with this one in particular. with the Capcom leaks happened, and there was a lot of personal info. There was a lot of details about that company, a Japanese company, that was put out there, and all their games were pretty much exposed, like everything, including the Monster Hunter games, the Resident Evil plans, stuff for Street Fighter. Remember when the Street Fighter leaks came out? The entire DLC that just pretty much got blown out the water, that everybody was like, oh man, like there goes their entire like run of season content, with all the different character releases. And Capcom, and specifically I think it was the Street Fighter main account, came out and made some sort of statements like, look, we understand stuff happened, but we're going to go about it this way. Just bear with us, show at least some courtesy, because we didn't expect this to happen, but this is what it is. And everybody was okay with that. Everybody was on the same page. But at the same time, every other media outlet, including Kinda Funny, including many other outlets, covered those leaks without a problem. And it's literally the exact same type of thing that happened. There's other issues too that people have pointed out, as you guys could see, where they've pointed at specific leaks for other games and other companies. Obviously, the Suicide Squad, obviously the GTA 6 leak, obviously the stuff with Microsoft, in the past with the Xbox leaks. There were many things that happened with all this stuff, and everybody has very diverging opinions about it, right? Some people more so than others when it comes to some of these things, where, again, you get statements down here that again, you could see a lot of people are saying like, yo, like this is what's up. Like, you can't be taking a stance like this or agreeing with a stance like this when there's clearly a conflict of interest over here. And personally, for me, if I'm speaking from myself, if I'm speaking from what I saw throughout all this stuff, this made everybody look bad. Not just Insomniac Games, because I feel like Insomniac Games didn't do anything wrong. They just got all their stuff to just put out there with under no fault of their own. But when you have this much of like a shaken trust between the audience or people that cover and follow games with those that are covering games in general, like Kinda Funny, it really puts this tension there that I feel like should be handled in a much better way. Because I'm sorry, like I can't look at Greg Miller's content and coverage of things like this, let alone gaming news, in the same way. Because if you were able to do all this stuff over here and cover this stuff, but then you clearly decide not to do all this with the Insomniac Games Leak, and it's probably because of these different relationships and friendships you have with that studio, to me, that's a breach of ethics. That's a breach of that's a conflict of interest. It's a breach of ethics, and it really poses some questions that I said in my last podcast that I don't think they're ready to answer or really talk about. Because for everything that you could say about how you're trying to be respectful for this company that went through this stuff, you clearly didn't handle it in the same way with any of the ones that just happened not too long ago. Like, and we have examples of you being in their games. You're in 2 of their games, as Easter eggs. You could go to Spider-Man 2 and go find the Kinda Funny crew there as shirtless Spider-Man. It's both Greg and Blessing. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's something wrong with it as someone that covers games. But for the common person, they might not have an issue with that. But then if that's the case, you have to have a better explanation of saying that you're not going to cover these leaks. It would have been one thing if Greg and any of the guys over there, Tim, Blessing, whoever else, came out and says like, look, we're not comfortable covering this because we understand that it's happened. We understand it's news, but we know those people. We're friends with them. We cover their stuff. We've had them over here. Like, we're just not comfortable with it. I felt like handling in that type of fashion would have been far better than the stance that they took and in the way that they actually covered it, because I feel many different people across the industry felt a type of way about that. And not just those in the industry, but also many in the audience, including their audience. So Greg, or anybody else in the industry wants to downplay that all they want, but that's the reality. And it's not anything that anybody asked for. It just what is. It just literally, that's what happened. And I think it could have been handled far better than how it actually ended up turning out. So it sucks to see that because, again, at the heart of it, Insomniac Games bothered nobody. They did nothing to anybody out there. They did not deserve that leak, that hack to happen to them. But we can't just not do our jobs because of how we feel personally about that. And when I say we can't just not just do our jobs, I'm speaking about the people within the industry. Who had a good actual statement about this? And I wish I could pull this up. Let me see if I could actually find it. But Steven Totillo actually had a good statement about this, or Steven Totillo, Insomniac Games. I'm trying to actually see if I could show you guys, because he actually had a really good tweet about this, okay? And he was saying, like, look, like, there's a fine line between going through all this stuff and actually covering it, and actually, like, doing your job. I mean, a fine line of actually feeling the type of way, trying to show respect and due diligence to everybody that it was affecting. And then what is it doing your job? Like, again, I have to go really, is this it? The details of, is this it? I'm trying to, yeah, here we go. This is it right here. This is it right here where he has this long thread where he's talking about all this stuff. You know, whenever you get a chance, I highly suggest you go read it for yourselves and see all the details, because I think there's even more tweets beyond these. But he had a really good stance on it. And you know who also had a good stance on it? Gene over at the Washington Post. He also had the same thing. It was like, look, you know, this sucks, but we got to do our jobs. We got to report on the news. This is the news that other people want to see. And it's also stuff that if we don't report on it, or if we don't talk about it, other people will. You know, that's just the part of the business. And it sucks, but it is what it is. And yeah, it was such a messy thing to see, and a clear double standard from what I saw. And I feel like more people at some point should be talking about that, because I've seen other videos on YouTube really try to discuss that. And some of the places that I feel like should be discussing it have not done so yet. So maybe, you know, now that we're going to the new year, maybe we have a real talk and real conversation about this stuff, about how we approach, you know, instances like this, but also the idea of ethics, the idea of like conflicts of interest, and the idea of actually doing our job while still trying to maintain whatever relationship or whatever stance that we have personally, and trying to separate that from the actual reality of actually covering games and being a journalist or whatever else in the games industry. So that was the last bad thing, I think, that happened in 2023 as far as the games industry is concerned. Now, there was other things, obviously, especially global issues. Obviously, the layoffs is a huge part that you could also throw in here like that, you know, that a lot of people had to deal with. These are like the actual issues and controversies that many people wanted to talk about. But I would throw in also the layoffs that happened at all the different places, including all the different outlets, you know, for media outlets that were covering games, all the different studios that were making games, and the different publishers. That was a very, very big deal. But that stuff doesn't always affect everybody that's involved or covering games and stuff. Obviously, the people who were employed, obviously that affects them big time. But as far as the audience is concerned, that doesn't really affect them, other than the games that they get later on down the line. But still a big issue nonetheless. So to wrap everything up and to kind of put everything into this sandwich, remember the sandwich method is what we were talking about, right? Let's kind of wrap this up by looking forward to 2024. Now that we're in the first day of 2024, we got games that are coming over the horizon. We got a lot of stuff happening at some point, which is going to be a big deal. So here, let me even pull up some of the game releases in 2024, okay? Because, we got a lot of big games to look forward to, that I'm looking forward to, that I'm excited to play. Because, man, I'm trying to find an actual, schedule. Okay, here we go. Game Informer. Game Informer usually comes through when it comes to scheduling. Like, whoever is over at Game Informer that's doing the schedule for game releases every year, give that person a raise. Give them some extra cash. You know what I'm saying? Because they are a resource that always comes through. I'm just saying. Granted, there isn't a lot of confirmed release dates throughout the year, but there is some nice release dates we could point to. So the big ones, okay, we got to talk about this here. Let me show you guys this release schedule. We're starting off in January at least, man. We got a couple big ones. Tekken 8, January 26th. That's going to be huge. I just did a video for the demo of Tekken 8, which is awesome. I cannot wait to play that game. I can't wait to jump online with everybody with that game on PlayStation 5. It's going to be so hype. It's going to be so much fun. But also, that same month, another game that I just covered recently, I did a preview for it, Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown. If you haven't seen my video on Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown, definitely go watch it after this podcast here, because it is awesome. There's a lot of great stuff to look forward to. I got to play that game with Ubisoft for about 3 or 4 hours, and I put together a nice video for you guys showing gameplay, giving my thoughts on the gameplay itself, talking about some elements of the story that I didn't want to spoil, and a few other things. But definitely check it out when you can, because I think that game is going to be interesting. I think a lot of people might dig that game more so than they realize, especially if you love Metroidvanias. If you like Prince of Persia in general, I think there's something there that you really will get a kick out of. Moving on to February for me, we got obviously Persona 3 Reload. I love Persona 3. Persona 3 is one of my favorite entries of the Persona series. I still think 5 is better, for many reasons. But Persona 3 Reload for Xbox is going to be sweet. It's going to be awesome. I'm getting that on Game Pass day one. Day one, son. Now, some people, I understand, if you want to get it on PlayStation 5 and play it like that, I totally understand. I'm a PlayStation man myself. But day one, I'm getting that on Game Pass because I'm just going to download it, going to play it, going to have so much fun with that. On top of that, too, Suicide Squad killed the Justice League. Now, the main reason why I'm getting into this game, and I can't talk about it too much because of the NDA stuff, but I can't say that I did play it, at least at this point now. I did play the beta / it's alpha or beta. It's really a beta that they had for Suicide Squad, the game. And I can't say exactly how I felt about the gameplay, but I am looking forward to playing it. And I want to see more of it based off the trailers and everything else. And also because, like I've said many, many times before, that was Kevin Conroy's last game or last project as Batman, the voice of Batman. So as a fan, a longtime Kevin Conroy fan, which I don't know if you can see here, I have a signed Kevin Conroy print of Batman there. I have to play this game, just to see his very last performance, because that was one of my Batman characters and voices growing up. Batman the Animated Series, Batman Arkham, every Batman video game that featured the animated series, every Batman project that included a Batman that needed a voice. He was the definitive voice of the character, just hands down, without question. It was awesome. Now, there's a couple other games coming out as well in February that I'm looking forward to. Tomb Raider 1 to 3 remastered. I'm thinking about checking that out, but the real remaster that I'm looking forward to is this bad boy right here. Star Wars Dark Forces Remastered. Why? Because Star Wars. That's why. Why specifically this one? Because this is a game that I feel like needed a remaster. This is the first game in the Jedi Knight series. It's the first game starring Kyle Katarn. It's the one that talks about getting the plans for the Death Star before Episode 4 A New Hope. And it's going to be really cool. It's going to be really, really dope. So if you haven't already checked out Dark Forces yet, you're going to want to wait till February to check this out because I feel like that's going to be a banger when it finally releases. So yeah, I can't wait to check that one out. So moving on from there, I'm moving myself back up here. Okay. Besides that, nothing else really in February for me. I know that we got a couple other games that are popping up. Helldivers 2, was it One Punch Man? A couple of these are fun. Oh, that's the last one. Okay, I thought it was pushing into next month. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Hands down, one of my most anticipated games of next year. The reason being is because I love Final Fantasy VII Remake. I love Crisis Core Reunion. I love FF7. And everybody else out here loves FF7. So that game's going to be massive. That's another day one for me. I'm getting that on PlayStation 5. Day one. Yeah, it's only coming out on PS5. Yeah, it's only coming out on PS5. Day one. We're grabbing it. Like, without question. Right? So moving on to March. March has the South Park game. The South Park game, for me at least, I think is going to be interesting because the South Park video games have been bangers. Or at least the last few South Park games we've gotten, especially the one where it's pretty much a parody of like superheroes. It's pretty much a parody of all that stuff, like the superhero like cinematic universe. Like, it was so much fun to check that out. Hey, so definitely looking forward to Snow Day. I think it's going to be pretty good. Some people are looking forward to Dragon's Dogma, Princess Peach Showtime. I totally get it, but South Park is the game for March for me. April, again, April's looking a little slim. Nothing really crazy. Yuden Chronicle 100 Heroes. If you like Suikoden, that's going to be your jam. I'm not really looking forward to it as much, at least a game that I'm not like, jumping up to at the first opportunity to play it. I'll get to it when I get to it because I did play that Yuden Chronicles Rising game. That was like the spin-off. That was like the action game that I got to play. I did a review of it here on the channel that you guys could go check out when you can. I'll try to see if maybe I can link it up here or something or in the description box. But yeah, it takes place as like a prequel where it sets up certain elements of 100 Heroes. That's like part of that. So I thought that it was fun. It was interesting because it was a good action game. But I don't know if I'm going to dive into Yuden Chronicles itself, see what happens. June is also looking slim. We don't have a lot of stuff confirmed. Same thing with August. September, Space Marine 2 might be a standout for some people. But now we get to like all these other games that are like, not given specific dates, which I think we'll get dates next year, as we go into the next couple months. Big one, obviously, here because of the picture, Hellblade 2. Hellblade, the first Hellblade, I thought was a really good game. If you haven't played it, go download it on Game Pass. It's out there right now that you guys could check out. And Hellblade 2, I think, is going to be very interesting. I think that Hellblade 2 might really go into some wild territory for it. Trying to scroll through some of these games. Again, they're all in alphabetical order. So it's not like they have it by release dates because none of these games really have a release date. Specific ones that it's going to come out throughout the year, which I think we'll get figured out. But some of the big ones, which I'm eventually going to get to here, Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. If you love Luigi's Mansion, that's going to be up your alley. The big one, obviously, that everybody knows, because if you know me, if you know what I'm waiting for next year, or this year, I should say, Star Wars Outlaws. Star Wars Outlaws, you guys know I love Star Wars. I was excited about Star Wars Outlaws. It looks very interesting. I wrote a whole op-ed about Star Wars Outlaws. I'll even show you guys here on my, on my page on Twitter. Okay, Star Wars Outlaws. I got to find it first. Jesus Christ. I got to find it here. But I'll go to the actual, the actual article. It's over on .esports. If you haven't already seen it, definitely go check out my article. Is Star Wars Outlaws really the first open world Star Wars game? My argument is yes. I'm really hyped up about this. There was reasons why it's the first open world Star Wars game. Definitely read this when you guys get a chance. Again, check it out. It's over on my Twitter. But again, there's so much stuff to look forward to this game. The idea of running around Tatooine, running around different planets in an open world setting, going from planet to space seamlessly with your actual, your starship, being able to work for different factions like Jabba the Hutt. Maybe if we're lucky, because this game takes place between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, maybe we'll get to see some Black Sun, Shadows of the Empire stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, there should be some big deals there. Hey, cannot wait to see more of that, but definitely go read that article from me. Again, I've had a couple different big articles about Star Wars come out throughout the year of 2023, especially the last day of 2023. I had a big article go up. That was pretty significant. That was pretty significant. That actually, you know what? I'll show you guys that too. Show you guys that here too as well with the new outlet that I'm running for the Nerd Stash. Check. Whoops. You gotta do there because they always have that pop up. But yeah, the top 10 best Star Wars games of every platform, every single platform: Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox, PC, and arcade. Literally running down top 10 games for you guys to check out. I'm not going to spoil too much of the list, but you can see Rogue Squadron is on there because it's Rogue Squadron. But go check that out as well. Again, let's get back to on topic here for more games that looking forward to this year, I should say. Now, as far as other games I'm looking forward to checking out, even though I might not be as hyped for them, I'm also wanting to see if Star Wars Hunters comes out finally this year, because I know that got pushed back, but definitely want to see if that actually has any sort of goodness to it, because every time I've seen that game, it has not looked good to me at all. It actually looks pretty bad, in more ways than one. And one of those games that I feel like is going to get easily forgotten. But the other one too, I should mention, because I just saw TMNT. There's an Untitled TMNT game on here. But the one that I'm looking forward to with that is The Last Ronin. TMNT The Last Ronin, I think is going to be interesting. I hope it comes out this year. But even if it doesn't, I feel like that is going to be another game that'll be really, really cool to see. So there's a lot of games, as you could tell, that are coming out next year that many people are going to want to see, we're going to want to play, they're looking forward to. Some people say, I see it's Kingdom Hearts missing link. Oh, God. Hopefully Kingdom Hearts 4 gets some sort of date down the line, but we'll see what happens there, because it's a Final Fantasy VII year for me with Square Enix. But even so, all those games to really see, to play, there's a lot of good stuff to look forward to. Now that we're done with 2023, now that we're done with all the main crazy stuff that happened last year, we can look forward to a much more bigger, better, more exciting, more interesting, hopefully more positive year for the games industry overall. And that being said, let me know your thoughts about all this down below in the comment section. Tell me some of the games that you're looking forward to playing the most in 2024. What are your most anticipated games? What are the games you're not looking forward to that you think are going to be garbage? What are the games that you feel like are really going to make an impact with everybody? Talk to me about all that stuff down below in the comments. And that's going to do it for the first video version of the podcast, of JJ's One Man Podcast. Hopefully you guys like this as well. Tell me if you like this format, because if you really dig it and you guys really support it, maybe I'll do it every single week. But at least for the plan going forward right now, granted, there was a lot of stuff to talk about here, but going forward, this won't be a frequent occasion, or at least it'll be frequent enough where I feel like if I got a lot to talk about, if I got a lot of stuff to really express myself about, then maybe I'll do a video episode. But if you guys really support this and you guys really come through for this, I'll do the podcast episodes in video format every single week, make it a weekly show for you guys, maybe Monday, Tuesday uploads, after the previous week kind of calms down, we could kind of tackle everything that happens throughout that week. But talk to me about that down below in the comment section. please leave me a like on this video. It supports the channel, supports the video. Does a lot of good stuff if you guys can. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. There's a ton of videos, ton of content right now on the channel besides this podcast episode, which will be part of a playlist of JJ's One Man Podcast that you guys could check out the previous episodes, all the stuff that I was referring to, or if you just want to see what the show is about and what the actual show and the discussions that I have with you guys is like. Check that out when you can. Go check out the game reviews as well, all the different videos, the gameplay videos of Let's Plays, gameplay impressions, unboxings. I did a whole, what was it, a couple weeks ago, I did a whole unboxing uncommon Star Wars games. As you guys can tell, hopefully you can't really see it here, but I have some Star Wars game stuff, classic Star Wars games that I was unboxing and talking about and showing you guys that a lot of people don't get to see. But there's videos like that that I know you'll enjoy. But anyway, that's all I got for you guys on this episode of the podcast. Talk to me in the comments. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, follow me on TikTok for daily uploads because I'm always constantly uploading stuff over there as well. But talk to me about that stuff down below in the comments, and I will talk to you all again very soon. Peace out, and stay epic, everybody. This channel is sponsored by Flynn's Arcade & More, located in Margate, Florida. Flynn's is one of the premier spots for gaming fans in South Florida. They have a variety of arcade games on cabinet for you to play throughout the week, including all of your beloved classics. You could also play a ton of new and current console games too, on PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo consoles. Grab a snack or drink and enjoy the best gaming experience you'll find. Visit during one of their many big events to connect with the gaming community in South Florida. Want to test your skills in competitive fighting games? Join any of the weekly tournaments that happen at Flynn's for a chance for some cool prizes. And if you're into tabletop gaming or model kit building, there's a bunch of events there for you too. Swing by Flynn's Arcade & More, located in Margate Boulevard in Margate, Florida. You won't find a better spot than Flynn's.